They sent a distress call to the galaxy. The Deathworlders heard. Captain Zara 9 of the Delicate Harmony pressed her 6-fingered hands against the smooth control panel. Her pale blue skin had turned almost white with fear. The ship's gentle hum, which usually calmed her nerves, now sounded like a death song. Through the viewing portal, she could see the massive dark ship surrounding her vessel like hungry predators. "Communications officer," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the ship's systems. "Send the distress call. Use the emergency galactic frequency." Officer Klex 2 nodded nervously. His thin fingers danced across the holographic interface. The Viridians were a peaceful species, evolved on a garden world where the biggest threat was choosing which fruit to eat for breakfast. They had never faced anything like this. "Captain, the message is ready," Klex 2 reported. "Should I transmit to the Galactic Council?" Zara 9 looked at the scanner readings again. 17 Krogar warships had them completely surrounded. The Krogar were raiders, pirates who swept through space taking whatever they wanted. They were larger than Viridians, with thick gray skin and sharp teeth. Their home world was harsh, with constant storms and dangerous wildlife. It had made them strong and cruel. "Send it to everyone," she decided. "Every frequency, every known civilization. Someone might help us." The message went out across the galaxy, traveling at faster than light speeds through quantum communication networks. It was simple and desperate. "This is Captain Zara 9 of the Viridian vessel Delicate Harmony. We are under attack by Krogar pirates near the Vega system. Our weapons are minimal. Our shields are failing. If any civilized species receives this message, please help. We have civilians aboard, including children. Please, someone help us." Across the galaxy, various species received the message. The proud Altarians who lived on floating cities above gas giants heard it and shook their heads sadly. They were too far away, and their ships were built for beauty, not war. The crystal beings of Zirion picked up the signal and calculated the odds of a successful rescue mission. The numbers were not encouraging. They chose to meditate instead. The mechanical synthoids processed the message and determined that helping would not increase their efficiency ratings. They deleted the message and continued with their scheduled maintenance routines. The aquatic dolphins of Aquatica heard the call and felt sympathy. But their water-filled ships were not designed for combat. One by one, the civilized species of the galaxy heard the plea and found reasons not to respond. Too far away, too dangerous, not their responsibility. The galaxy was vast, and the Krogar were known to be ruthless. Why risk their own lives for strangers? But there was one species that had only recently joined the galactic community. They called themselves humans, and they came from a world called Earth. Most of the galaxy considered them curious oddities. They were from what the scientific community classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet so dangerous that most species couldn't understand how anything could evolve there. Earth had active volcanoes, massive storms, freezing temperatures, scorching deserts, and creatures that spent their entire lives trying to kill and eat each other. The humans had not only survived this nightmare world, they had thrived on it. They had conquered their planet completely, taming fire, electricity, and even splitting the atom. Commander Sarah Chen was on duty aboard the human vessel Indomitable when the distress call reached Earth's outer monitoring station. The space station immediately forwarded it to all human ships in the area. Sarah read the message 3 times, her jaw tightening with each word. "Navigation, how far are we from the Vega system?" she asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez checked his displays. "Approximately 6 hours at maximum thrust, Commander." "Weapons status?" "All systems operational, ma'am. Kinetic cannons loaded, missile tubes ready, point defense systems online." Sarah stood up from her command chair. She was tall even by human standards, with dark hair pulled back in a military style. Her brown eyes had the look of someone who had seen combat before. Like most humans, she had grown up in a world where danger was everywhere. It had made her strong, but it had also taught her something that the other galactic species had forgotten. Sometimes you had to fight for what was right. "Engineering." "I need everything you can give me," she called out. "We're going to help those people." The bridge crew began their preparations without question. This was what humans did. On Earth, when someone was in trouble, you helped them. It didn't matter if you knew them or not. It was simply the right thing to do. As the Indomitable changed course toward the Vega system, similar scenes played out on human ships throughout that region of space. The destroyer Relentless turned from its patrol route. The cruiser Defiant abandoned its scheduled supply run. The frigate Tenacious powered up its weapon systems and set course for the coordinates in the distress call. None of them asked for permission from Earth Command. None of them waited for orders. The call for help had been sent and humans had heard it. That was enough. Back on the Delicate Harmony, Captain Zara 9 watched her scanner display with growing despair. No ships were approaching. The Krogar commander had sent a message demanding surrender. They had 10 minutes to prepare for boarding, or the pirates would simply destroy them and take whatever survived. "Any responses to our distress call?" she asked quietly. Klex 2 checked his communications array. "Nothing, Captain." "I'm sorry." Zara 9 closed her eyes. She had 847 civilians aboard her ship, including 200 children who were traveling to start new colonies. They had trusted her to keep them safe. She had failed. "All hands, prepare for surrender procedures," she announced over the ship's communication system. "I'm sorry." She didn't know that help was coming. She had never heard of humans, and wouldn't have believed that anyone would travel across space to help strangers. But 6 hours away, human ships were pushing their engines to the breaking point, racing through space toward a fight they might not win, for people they had never met. The galaxy was about to learn something new about the species from the death world called Earth. They sent a distress call to the galaxy. The Deathworlders heard it. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Indomitable's bridge, watching the tactical display as her ship raced through space. The engineering crew had managed to squeeze an extra 12% power from the engines, but it still wouldn't be enough. The distress call had come from 6 hours away, and the Viridians had said their shields were already failing. "Communications? Are you picking up anything from the other human vessels?" she asked. Ensign Park looked up from his console. "Yes, ma'am. The Relentless and Defiant are approximately 30 minutes behind us. The Tenacious is coming from a different vector and should arrive about the same time we do." Sarah nodded. It wasn't a large force, but it would have to do. She had read the intelligence files on the Krogar during the flight. They were raiders who preferred easy targets. They usually ran when faced with serious opposition, but their ships were heavily armed and their crews were experienced fighters. "Tactical analysis, Lieutenant Morrison?" The weapons officer pulled up a holographic display. The Krogar typically travel in packs of 15 to 20 ships. Their vessels are older designs but well-maintained. Heavy armor, medium-range plasma weapons, basic shields. They rely on numbers and intimidation more than advanced technology. "What about the Viridian ship?" "The Delicate Harmony is a civilian transport. No significant weapons, minimal shields designed for comfort rather than combat. Against even one Krogar ship, they wouldn't stand a chance." Sarah studied the display. The math wasn't encouraging. 4 human ships against potentially 20 Krogar raiders, and they had to protect a defenseless civilian vessel at the same time. On paper, it looked like suicide, but humans didn't think the same way as other species. Where the Altarians saw impossible odds, humans saw a challenge. Where the Synthoids calculated failure probability, humans calculated how to win anyway. Earth had taught them that impossible was just another word for difficult. "All right, people," Sarah announced to her crew. "We're going into a fight we might not win, to help people we've never met because it's the right thing to do. Anyone who wants to transfer off at the next station can do so with no questions asked." She waited. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Not a single person moved. After a moment, Lieutenant Morrison spoke up. "With respect, Commander, where exactly would we transfer to? We're in the middle of space heading toward a fight. Besides," he added with a grin, "my grandmother always said that humans don't back down from bullies." The rest of the crew murmured agreement. Sarah felt a familiar warmth in her chest. This was what made humans special. Not their technology or their strength, but their willingness to stand up for others, even when it was dangerous. Meanwhile, in the Vega system, the situation aboard the Delicate Harmony was getting worse. Captain Zara 9 had ordered the surrender, but the Krogar weren't interested in taking prisoners. Their commander, a massive brute named Graxtor, had decided it would be easier to simply blast the ship apart and salvage whatever was valuable. "Pathetic plant eaters," Graxtor growled to his crew. "Look how they cower. This is why the weak deserve to be eaten by the strong." The Krogar had evolved on a world where survival meant being the biggest predator. Their society was built around strength and dominance. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't use. To them, the Viridians were just prey. "Commander," one of Graxtor's officers reported, "the prey ship sent a distress call before we jammed their communications. Should we be concerned about rescue attempts?" Graxtor's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Who would come? The galaxy is full of cowards. We have been raiding these trade routes for cycles and no one has ever challenged us. Begin the attack. Take what we can use and destroy the rest. The Krogar ships began moving into attack formation. Their plasma weapons powered up with an ominous glow. On the delicate harmony, Viridian families hugged each other and waited for the end. But 12 minutes away, moving at maximum speed, the human ship Tenacious detected the energy signatures of charging weapons. Captain Maria Santos had been commanding human vessels for 15 years, and she had never lost a ship or failed to complete a mission. "All stop," she ordered. "We're close enough for long-range sensors." "What's the situation?" Her tactical officer studied the readings. 17 Krogar ships surrounding one Viridian transport. The raiders are powering weapons and moving into attack formation. Estimate 90 seconds until they open fire. Santos felt ice in her veins. They were still too far away. Even if she pushed the engines past their safety limits, she couldn't reach the battle in time to prevent the first attack. The Viridians were about to die and there was nothing she could do about it. Unless... Weapons, do we have any long-range ordnance? Our longest-range missiles have a theoretical maximum of 8 light minutes, but accuracy drops significantly at that distance. How many do we have? 12 quantum torpedoes, ma'am. Santos made a decision that would have seemed insane to any other species in the galaxy. She was going to fire weapons at targets she could barely detect, across a distance that made accuracy nearly impossible, to help people she had never met. Lock onto the largest Krogar ship, and fire all torpedoes. Maximum yield, spread pattern. Ma'am, at this range the probability of hitting anything is less than 15%. Then we'd better hope we get lucky. Fire. 12 quantum torpedoes launched from the Tenacious, racing through space at incredible speed. They would take almost 2 minutes to reach their targets, and Santos knew that most of them would miss. But sometimes the threat of attack was as important as the attack itself. The Krogar sensors detected the incoming missiles 90 seconds before impact. Graxtor stared at his display in confusion. Someone was actually shooting at them? Who would be foolish enough to attack Krogar raiders? "Evasive maneuvers," he roared. "All ships, defensive positions." Find out where those missiles came from. The Krogar fleet scattered, their attack on the Viridians forgotten as they tried to avoid the incoming weapons. Most of the torpedoes missed, but 2 found their targets. One Krogar ship lost its shields and another took damage to its engine systems. But more importantly, the attack had bought time. The human ships were coming, and now the Krogar knew they were in for a real fight. As the Tenacious raced toward the battle at maximum speed, Captain Santos opened communications with the other human vessels. "All ships, this is Santos. The party's about to start and we're not invited. Let's crash it anyway." They sent a distress call to the galaxy. The Deathworlders heard it. Commander Graxtor of the Krogar Raiders had never experienced fear before this moment. In his 30 years of raiding across the galaxy, no one had ever dared to attack his fleet. The civilized species always ran or hid or begged for mercy. They never fought back. But now his sensors were showing 4 unknown ships approaching at incredible speed. And whoever they were, they had already proven they weren't afraid to fire first. One of his vessels was listing badly after taking a direct hit from the long-range missiles, and his crews were nervous. "What species are they?" he demanded of his intelligence officer. The smaller Krogar checked his databases frantically. "Unknown configuration, Commander." The energy signatures don't match any known galactic fleet, but their weapons technology appears to be primitive. Primitive? Graxtor's massive jaw opened in what passed for a laugh among his people. Then why are my warriors afraid of them? What Graxtor didn't understand was that primitive didn't mean ineffective. Human weapons were based on kinetic energy, chemical explosives, and nuclear fusion rather than the exotic plasma and particle beam technology used by most galactic species. To advanced civilizations, human weapons seemed crude and simple, but crude and simple often meant reliable and devastating. Captain Sarah Chen brought the indomitable out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the combat zone. Her ship's sensors immediately painted the tactical situation in stark detail on the bridge displays. 17 Krogar ships, 1 damaged Viridian transport, and 3 other human vessels approaching from different angles. "Perfect," she muttered. "We've got them surrounded." Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his navigation console. "Commander, we're outnumbered more than 4-1. "Good," Sarah replied. "That means we have them right where we want them. If we were outnumbered 40-1, then I'd be worried." It was a very human way of thinking. Most species would calculate odds and retreat when faced with overwhelming force. Humans looked at the same situation and figured out how to make the enemy's numbers work against them. "Communications, open a channel to all human vessels," Sarah ordered. "It's time to coordinate our attack." Within seconds, she was connected with Captain Santos of the Tenacious, Williams of the Relentless, and Kumar of the Defiant. All 4 commanders were experienced officers, and they had trained together at Earth's Naval Academy. They knew each other's fighting styles and could work together without extensive planning. "This is Chen. What's our situation, people?" Captain Williams was the first to respond. Relentless reporting. "I count 17 hostile ships in a loose formation around the civilian transport. They seem confused by our approach vectors." "Defiant here," added Captain Kumar. "Their energy readings suggest older technology, but they've got us outnumbered. Recommend we use Formation Tango," Sarah smiled. Formation Tango was a human tactical doctrine that most galactic species considered insane. Instead of trying to match the enemy ship for ship, the human vessels would charge directly into the center of the enemy formation, relying on speed, surprise, and superior coordination to break up their attack. "Confirmed. Formation Tango. Santos, you're already closest to the target. Take point and draw their fire. The rest of us will come in from different angles and split their attention." "Copy that," Santos replied. "Tenacious beginning attack run now." The human ships accelerated toward the Krogar formation like bullets fired from 4 different guns. Their approach was so aggressive and unexpected that the Krogar commanders didn't know how to respond. In their experience, battles were fought at long range, with both sides maneuvering carefully and trading shots until one side retreated. They had never encountered an enemy that simply charged straight at them. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead vessel," Graxtor ordered. "Show these fools what happens when they challenge the Krogar." 16 Krogar ships opened fire at once, filling space with plasma bolts and energy beams. The amount of firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. Any normal ship caught in that barrage would have been vaporized instantly, but the Tenacious wasn't a normal ship. Captain Santos had grown up on Earth, where hurricanes could flatten cities and earthquakes could split continents. She had learned to fly in Earth's violent atmosphere, where a single mistake could mean death. Dodging enemy fire was just another challenge. The Tenacious twisted through the plasma barrage like a dancer, its engines screaming as Santos pushed the ship beyond its design limits. Energy blasts that should have connected missed by meters. The ship's armor took a few glancing hits, but nothing that penetrated its defenses. And while the Krogar were focused on the dancing target in front of them, the other 3 human ships struck from the sides. The Indomitable came in low and fast, its kinetic cannons firing solid projectiles at incredible velocity. The tungsten rounds punched through Krogar shields like paper and tore massive holes in their hulls. One raider ship exploded in a ball of fire as its reactor was breached. The Relentless attacked from above, launching a spread of nuclear missiles that detonated among the tightly packed Krogar formation. The explosions didn't destroy ships outright, but the electromagnetic pulses disabled sensors and communications across half the enemy fleet. The Defiant made its run from below, targeting the Krogar command ship with everything it had. Captain Kumar had identified Graxtor's flagship by its energy signature and decided to cut off the head of the snake. Graxtor felt his ship shake as human weapons tore through its defenses. Alarms blared across the bridge and his officers shouted damage reports. But what shocked him more than the attack itself was the way these unknown enemies fought. They showed no fear. They didn't retreat when faced with superior numbers. They charged directly into the teeth of his fleet's firepower and somehow survived. It was like fighting against the forces of nature itself. "What manner of beings are these?" he roared. His communications officer managed to patch into one of the human ship's transmissions. The translator systems took a moment to process the unknown language, then broadcast the message across the Krogar fleet. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Indomitable," the voice said calmly. "You are attacking innocent civilians. Stand down immediately or we will destroy you." Earth? Graxtor had never heard of such a place, but the tone of the message sent chills through his crew. There was no boasting, no threats, just a simple statement of fact. "Surrender or die." "Commander," his tactical officer called out, We're losing ships fast. 3 destroyed, 4 badly damaged. These humans fight like nothing we've encountered before. Humans. Now Graxtor had a name for his enemies, but naming them didn't make them any less terrifying. He watched on his screens as the 4 human ships continued their attack, moving with precision and coordination that seemed impossible for such a small force. Then he noticed something that made his blood freeze. The human ships weren't just attacking randomly. They were specifically targeting any Krogar vessel that aimed at the defenseless Viridian transport. Every time one of his captains tried to fire at the civilians, a human ship would appear and destroy them. These creatures weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to protect others, even at the cost of tactical advantage. It was behavior so alien to Krogar thinking that Graxtor couldn't understand it. On the bridge of the Delicate Harmony, Captain Zara 9 watched the battle with amazement. The human ships moved like living things, dancing through enemy fire and striking with surgical precision. She had never seen anything like it. "Who are they?" she whispered. Officer Klex 2 was monitoring the communications channels. "They call themselves humans, Captain. They're from a place called Earth I've never heard of either. Why are they helping us?" It was a question that would puzzle the galaxy for years to come. But the answer was simple even if no one else understood it. Humans helped because they could. Because it was right. Because someone had asked for help and that was enough. They sent a distress call to the galaxy. The Deathworlders heard it. The battle had been raging for 20 minutes and the Krogar fleet was falling apart. Commander Graxtor watched in disbelief as his carefully organized raiding force was systematically destroyed by 4 ships that should have been easy prey. 7 of his vessels were gone, reduced to drifting hulks or expanding clouds of debris. 5 more were badly damaged and trying to limp away from the fight. The remaining ships were scattered across the combat zone, their formations broken and their crews demoralized. But what terrified Graxtor more than the losses was how the humans fought. They showed no mercy to his raiders, but they went out of their way to avoid causing unnecessary destruction. When one of his damaged ships stopped firing and began to retreat, the humans let it go. When escape pods launched from destroyed vessels, the human ships actually moved to protect them from debris. It was completely alien behavior. In Krogar culture, you fought until one side was completely destroyed. The idea of showing mercy to a defeated enemy was not just foreign, it was incomprehensible. Yet these humans seemed to make a distinction between warriors who were still fighting and those who had given up. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "the humans are transmitting again." "Put it through," Graxtor growled. The voice of the human commander filled his bridge. "Krogar vessels, this is Commander Chen. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now and we will allow your surviving ships to depart. Continue fighting and we will destroy you all. You have 60 seconds to decide." Graxtor's massive hands clenched into fists. Everything in his warrior's heart screamed at him to fight to the death. But he was also a practical leader, and he could see the tactical situation clearly. His fleet was broken. The humans had outfought them completely, using tactics and technologies that his crews couldn't match. More importantly, these humans had just offered him something no enemy had ever offered before: the chance to live. "All ships," he broadcast to his remaining forces, "this is Graxtor. Ceasefire and withdraw. We are leaving." The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but they were the only rational choice. The surviving Krogar ships powered down their weapons and began moving away from the battle zone. As they retreated, Graxtor found himself studying the human vessels on his sensors. They were smaller than his ships with less armor and simpler weapons. By every measure his species used to evaluate military strength, they should have been inferior. But they had fought with a coordination and ferocity that had overwhelmed his numerically superior force. As the Krogar fleet limped away into deep space, the 4 human ships moved to surround the Viridian transport. Captain Zara 9 watched nervously as the unknown vessels approached. She had just witnessed their combat capabilities, and despite their apparent rescue of her ship, she wasn't sure what they wanted. "Captain," Officer Klex 2 reported, "we're receiving a communication from the lead human vessel." "Put it through," Zara 9 said quietly. The view screen activated, showing the bridge of the human ship. Captain Zara 9 got her first look at one of the legendary Deathworlders and was surprised by what she saw. The human commander was tall by Viridian standards with dark skin and kind eyes. She looked tired but alert, and when she smiled, it was genuinely warm. Captain Zara 9, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Indomitable. Are you and your people all right? Zara 9 found herself staring. After everything she had heard about the violent nature of Deathworld species, she had expected the humans to be crude and savage. Instead, the first thing this warrior had done was ask about her people's well-being. We are unharmed, Zara 9 managed to say, thanks to you. But I don't understand. Why did you help us? You don't know us. We have nothing to offer you in return. Sarah's expression showed genuine confusion. You sent a distress call. You needed help. That's all the reason we needed. It was such a simple statement, but it rocked Zara 9 to her core. In galactic society, everything had a price. Species helped each other because of trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, or political alliances. The idea of helping strangers simply because they needed help was so unusual that most civilizations had no word for it. I need to report this to my government, Zara 9 said. They will want to thank you properly. Perhaps we can arrange some kind of payment or trade agreement. That's not necessary, Sarah replied gently. We don't need payment for doing the right thing. But if you want to help other people the way we helped you, that would be payment enough. The connection ended, leaving Zara 9 staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. They had just encountered something that wasn't supposed to exist in their carefully ordered galaxy. True altruism. Word of the battle spread quickly through galactic communication networks. The Viridian government sent an official report to the Galactic Council, describing the attack by Krogar raiders and their rescue by unknown ships from a species called humans. The reaction was immediate and intense. Most council members had never heard of humans, and they were shocked to learn that a new species had somehow acquired starships and weapons advanced enough to defeat the notorious Krogar raiders. The Altarians were the first to demand information. Their delicate sensibilities were offended by the idea that someone had solved a problem through violence, even if that violence had saved innocent lives. They called for an immediate investigation into these aggressive Deathworlders and their dangerous tendencies. The Synthoids processed the data and determined that the humans represented an unknown variable in galactic affairs. They began calculating probability matrices for various scenarios involving human intervention in future conflicts. The aquatic dolphins of Aquatica were more positive in their response. They appreciated the humans' willingness to protect civilians, though they questioned the necessity of destroying so many Krogar ships. But it was the reaction of the smaller, weaker species that was most significant. For the first time in centuries, they had seen someone stand up to the galaxy's bullies. Ships that had been afraid to leave their home systems began venturing out again. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to piracy started carrying traffic once more. The humans had done something that no galactic peacekeeping force had ever accomplished. They had made the raiders afraid. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Marcus Thompson received a priority message at Earth Naval Command. As the head of humanity's space forces, he was responsible for making decisions about Earth's involvement in galactic affairs. The message was from the Galactic Council, formally requesting a meeting with representatives of the human species. They wanted to discuss Earth's application for membership in the galactic community, trade agreements, and something called mutual defense protocols. Thompson read the message 3 times, then called his aide. Get me a secure line to the president. We need to talk about our new galactic neighbors. As he waited for the connection, Thompson thought about the report he had received from Commander Chen. 4 human ships had defeated a force 4 times their size and saved 847 innocent lives. It had been a good day's work. He didn't realize that it was also the beginning of humanity's transformation from an unknown species on the edge of the galaxy to one of its most influential powers. The Deathworlders had answered a call for help, and the galaxy would never be the same. They sent a distress call to the galaxy. The Deathworlders heard it. 6 months after the rescue of the delicate Harmony, the galaxy had become a very different place. News of the human intervention had spread to every corner of civilized space, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees who had suddenly found the courage to travel again. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the central chamber of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime, waiting to address the most powerful civilizations in known space. As Earth's first representative to the galactic community, She carried the hopes and fears of her entire species. The chamber was a marvel of engineering, a vast dome that could accommodate representatives from dozens of different worlds. The Altarians floated in their gossamer atmospheric suits, while the crystalline Xerians projected themselves as shimmering holograms. The mechanical synthoids stood in perfect formation, their sensors recording every word. But Elena's attention was focused on the small group of Viridian delegates near the front of the chamber. Captain Zara 9 was among them, no longer commanding a transport ship but serving as her government's special envoy to the council. "Honored representatives," Elena began, her voice carried by universal translators to every corner of the chamber. "6 months ago, my people received our first communication from your galaxy. It was a call for help from beings we had never met, asking for assistance against enemies we didn't know existed." She paused, looking around the chamber. "My people answered that call not because we expected reward, not because of treaties or trade agreements, but because it was the right thing to do. Today I stand before you to explain why we believe this simple principle should guide all our future relationships." The response was immediate. Councillor Veltar of the Altarians rose gracefully into the air, his delicate features twisted with disdain. "The human representative speaks of simple principles, but her species has introduced chaos into our carefully balanced galactic order. Violence as a solution to conflict is primitive and dangerous." Elena had expected this criticism. The Altarians had been the most vocal opponents of human membership in the Council, arguing that Deathworld species were inherently unstable and aggressive. "Councillor Veltar," she replied calmly, "you speak of balance, but what kind of balance allows pirates to attack innocent civilians, while civilized worlds look the other way? What kind of order permits the strong to prey upon the weak without consequence?" "The Krogar situation was regrettable," Veltar admitted. "But violence only leads to more violence. Your people's actions may have saved those particular Viridians, but they have also escalated tensions throughout the galaxy." That was when Captain Zara 9 stood up. As the representative of the species that had been rescued, she had the right to address the Council directly. "Councillor Veltar, with respect, you were not aboard my ship when the Krogar surrounded us. You did not see the fear in the eyes of our children when they prepared to die. The human vessels didn't create chaos, they ended it." She turned to address the entire chamber. "Since the battle at Vega, Krogar raids have decreased by 80%. Trade routes that were abandoned are now safe again. Merchant ships carry cargo without fear, and civilian transports no longer travel in convoy for protection. The humans didn't just save 847 lives that day. They saved thousands more by showing the galaxy's predators that there are consequences for their actions." The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives huddled with their advisors, whispering in dozens of languages. Elena watched their faces and body language, trying to gauge their reactions. The synthoids were the next to speak. Their primary representative, designated Unit 7743, projected its voice with mechanical precision. "Analysis of galactic commerce data confirms the Viridian statement. Human intervention has resulted in a 23.7% increase in interstellar trade and a 67.4% reduction in piracy incidents. From a purely statistical perspective, their actions have been beneficial to galactic stability." This surprised Elena. She had expected the artificial beings to oppose human membership based on their logical, emotionless worldview. But apparently, even machines could appreciate results. The debate continued for hours. The aquatic dolphins argued that while they appreciated human intentions, the methods were too aggressive. The crystal beings of Xerion questioned whether any species capable of such violence could be trusted with advanced technology. But gradually, Elena began to notice something interesting. The loudest opponents of human membership were all species from safe, protected worlds. The Altarians had never faced a serious threat to their floating cities. The synthoids were machines who didn't fear death. The crystal beings could teleport across vast distances if threatened. It was the vulnerable species who spoke in favor of humanity. The Viridians, obviously, but also the peaceful gardener species whose farming worlds had been raided for decades. The small, furry quicklings whose fast ships were perfect targets for pirates. The aquatic kelp dancers whose underwater cities were defenseless against orbital bombardment. Finally, an ancient voice spoke from the center of the chamber. Elder Zhuthak of the Deep Ones was the oldest member of the council, representing a species so ancient that they remembered when the galaxy was young. Their massive form rarely moved, and when they spoke, everyone listened. Young humans, Shuthak rumbled. Your species has existed in space for only a few of your years. Yet you have already changed the balance of power in this galaxy. Some fear you for this, others praise you. But I'm curious about your motivations. Elena felt the weight of every eye in the chamber upon her. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future among the stars. Elder Shuthak, my people don't seek to rule the galaxy or impose our values on others. We seek only to live in peace and to help others do the same. On our world, we learned that civilization is not about being safe from danger. It's about protecting each other from danger. And if the council refuses your membership? Shuthak asked. If we declare you too dangerous to join our community? Elena smiled. Then we will continue to answer distress calls anyway. We will continue to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will continue to do what we believe is right, whether you approve or not. The ancient being's laugh was like distant thunder, spoken like a true Deathworlder. You offer us partnership, but you do not beg for it. You will help others whether we permit it or not. Shuthak turned to address the chamber. Fellow counselors, we have debated this issue long enough. The humans have proven their value through their actions. They have also proven their independence through their words. I believe it is time to vote. The vote was close, but humanity was accepted into the galactic community by a margin of 3 votes. Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders as the results were announced. But as she prepared to leave the chamber, Elder Shuthak approached her with a private message. Ambassador Vasquez, the ancient being said, you should know that your acceptance today was not based on your diplomacy or your promises. It was based on fear. Elena was confused. Fear? Fear of what? Fear of what might happen if we tried to stop you, Shuthak explained. Your species has already shown that you will act according to your conscience regardless of official approval. Better to have you inside our community, where we can attempt to guide your actions than outside it, where you might act without our input at all. As Elena walked back to her ship, she realized that Elder Shuthak had understood something that many of the other counselors had missed. Humans didn't need permission to do what they thought was right. The galaxy could either work with them or get out of their way, but it could never stop them from answering the call when someone needed help. The Deathworlders were now officially part of galactic civilization. The real changes were just beginning. They sent a distress call to the galaxy. The Deathworlders heard it. 2 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and the changes were visible everywhere. What had started as a simple rescue mission had transformed into something much larger. The humans had not just saved one ship. They had awakened something in the galaxy that had been sleeping for far too long. Captain Zara 9, now Admiral Zara 9 of the newly formed Galactic Defense Force, stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the final preparations for their most ambitious mission yet. The GDF was a volunteer organization, created after dozens of species had requested human assistance in protecting their trade routes and colonies. But this wasn't just a human operation anymore. Viridian ships flew alongside human vessels, their crews trained in combat tactics they had never thought they would need. Quickling fast attack craft darted between the larger ships, their natural speed enhanced by human targeting systems. Even some of the peaceful gardener species had contributed supply ships and medical vessels. Admiral, her communications officer, reported, "We're receiving the final confirmation from Earth Command. Operation Safe Harbor is approved to begin." Zara 9 nodded. Operation Safe Harbor was the largest anti-piracy campaign in galactic history. Intelligence reports had identified the main Krogar stronghold in the Outer Rim, a massive space station where raiders gathered to plan attacks and divide their stolen goods. For decades, it had been considered untouchable, protected by natural nebula formations and defended by hundreds of ships. Today, that was going to change. "All ships, this is Admiral Zara 9, she broadcast to the mixed fleet around her. 2 years ago, I sent a desperate call for help into the void, not knowing if anyone would answer. Today, we answer the calls of those who cannot defend themselves. Today, we show the galaxy that the age of fear is over." The fleet numbered 200 ships from 17 different species. It was the largest peaceful cooperation in galactic history, united not by conquest or politics, but by a simple desire to protect the innocent. But the real revolution wasn't in the ships or the weapons. It was in the people. Species that had been victims for centuries were learning to fight back. The gentle Viridians had established military academies. The timid gardeners were building defensive fleets. The scholarly Xerions were developing new defensive technologies. Humanity hadn't just taught them tactics and technology. They had taught them something more valuable, the belief that they could make a difference. Commander Sarah Chen, now promoted to admiral, led the human contingent of the fleet. Her ship, still the Indomitable, had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Pirates scattered at the first sign of her distinctive energy signature, and civilian captains felt safer just knowing she was in the same star system. But Sarah wasn't thinking about her reputation as she prepared for battle. She was thinking about a conversation she'd had the night before with her daughter, who was now old enough to understand what her mother did for a living. "Mom," 8-year-old Lisa had asked, "why do you have to go fight the bad guys? Can't someone else do it?" It was the same question Sarah had been asking herself for 2 years. Earth had dozens of other capable commanders. The other species had their own fleets now. Why did humans always seem to end up in the front lines of every major conflict? The answer, she realized, wasn't about duty or obligation. It was about choice. Humans chose to fight because someone had to, and they refused to let others carry that burden alone. Fleet positions confirmed. Her tactical officer reported, "All ships are ready for the assault." The Krogar stronghold appeared on the main display, a massive structure bristling with weapons and surrounded by defensive platforms. Sarah had studied the intelligence reports carefully. The station held over 10,000 raiders and their support staff, along with hundreds of captured civilian workers who had been enslaved during pirate raids. This wasn't just about stopping future attacks. It was about saving the people who were suffering right now. "Begin the operation," Sarah ordered. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not because of the scale or the technology, but because of the way it was fought. The combined fleet didn't simply attack the station and destroy everything in sight. Instead, they executed a carefully planned operation designed to minimize casualties and maximize the rescue of prisoners. Human ships used their superior maneuverability to disable defensive platforms, while Viridian vessels, equipped with advanced sensors, identified which sections of the station contained prisoners. Quickling ships darted through the combat zone, marking safe corridors for evacuation shuttles. The Krogar defenders fought fiercely, but they were facing something they had never encountered before, an enemy that cared more about saving lives than taking them. Every time they tried to use prisoners as shields, rescue ships appeared to extract the captives. Every time they attempted to destroy evidence of their crimes, GDF forces were there to stop them. Commander Graxtor, the same raider who had fled from the human ships 2 years earlier, led the station's final defense. He had spent months preparing for this day, knowing that eventually the humans and their allies would come for him. But as he watched his carefully planned defenses crumble, he realized something that chilled him to his core. The attackers weren't just superior in numbers or technology. They were fighting with a coordination and purpose that his raiders couldn't match, because they were fighting for something larger than themselves. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the humans are transmitting a surrender demand." "Put it through," Graxtor growled. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked older than when he had first encountered her, marked by the weight of command and the memory of battles fought, but her eyes still held the same quiet determination that had terrified him during their first encounter. "Commander Graxtor," she said calmly, "your position is hopeless. Surrender now, and we guarantee the safety of all non-combatants on your station. Continue fighting and we will take it by force, but the prisoners will still be protected." It was the same impossible choice she had offered him 2 years ago: surrender and live or fight and lose. But this time Graxtor understood something he had missed before. The humans weren't offering him mercy because they were weak. They were offering it because they were strong enough to choose compassion over vengeance. "What happens to my people if we surrender?" he asked. "The raiders will be tried for their crimes according to galactic law, but they will be treated fairly, and those who choose to change their ways will be given that opportunity." Graxtor looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were tired, defeated, and afraid. For the first time in his life, he had to choose between his pride and their lives. "All stations," he broadcast throughout the station, "cease fire and prepare for surrender." As the battle ended and the rescue operations began, Admiral Zara 9 received reports from throughout the station. Over 3,000 prisoners had been liberated, including civilians from dozens of different species who had been captured over the years. Medical teams were treating the injured, while counselors helped traumatized captives prepare for their return home. But the most significant report came from the intelligence teams searching the station's databases. They had found detailed records of Krogar operations throughout the galaxy, including the locations of hidden bases, planned raids, and allied criminal organizations. "Admiral," her intelligence officer reported, "with this information, we could eliminate organized piracy in this entire sector within 6 months." Zara 9 smiled. 2 years ago, she had been a frightened transport captain sending a desperate plea into the void. Today, she commanded a fleet that could reshape the galaxy's future. As the GDF fleet prepared to return home, Admiral Chen opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. 2 years ago, she said, the Viridians sent a distress call to the galaxy. Today, that call has been answered not just by humans, but by all of us working together. We have shown that when civilized species stand together, there is no force in the galaxy that can stand against us. She paused, looking out at the liberated prisoners being transferred to medical ships and the defeated raiders being prepared for transport to trial facilities. But our work isn't finished. As long as there are those who would harm the innocent, as long as there are calls for help going unanswered, we will be here. That is our promise to the galaxy and to each other. The message was transmitted to every corner of civilized space, carried by quantum communicators to worlds that had never felt truly safe before. On distant planets, families slept peacefully knowing that somewhere in the void, ships crewed by beings from dozens of worlds stood ready to answer their call for help. The galaxy had learned something important in the 2 years since the delicate harmony had sent its desperate message. Help wasn't coming from governments or councils or official organizations. Help was coming from ordinary beings who had decided that someone else's suffering was their responsibility too. The Deathworlders had answered that first call, but they were no longer alone. The galaxy had found its voice, and that voice said the same thing the humans had said from the beginning. When someone needs help, we answer the call. It was a simple message, but it had changed everything. The age of fear is over. The fleet numbered 200 ships from 17 different species. It was the largest peaceful cooperation in galactic history, united not by conquest or politics, but by a simple desire to protect the innocent. But the real revolution wasn't in the ships or the weapons. It was in the people. Species that had been victims for centuries were learning to fight back. The gentle Viridians had established military academies. The timid gardeners were building defensive fleets. The scholarly Xerians were developing new defensive technologies. Humanity hadn't just taught them tactics and technology. They had taught them something more valuable, the belief that they could make a difference. Commander Sarah Chen, now promoted to admiral, led the human contingent of the fleet. Her ship, still the Indomitable, had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Pirates scattered at the first sign of her distinctive energy signature, and civilian captains felt safer just knowing she was in the same star system. But Sarah wasn't thinking about her reputation as she prepared for battle. She was thinking about a conversation she'd had the night before with her daughter, who was now old enough to understand what her mother did for a living. "Mom," 8-year-old Lisa had asked, "why do you have to go fight the bad guys? Can't someone else do it?" It was the same question Sarah had been asking herself for 2 years. Earth had dozens of other capable commanders. The other species had their own fleets now. Why did humans always seem to end up in the front lines of every major conflict? The answer, she realized, wasn't about duty or obligation. It was about choice. Humans chose to fight because someone had to, and they refused to let others carry that burden alone. "Fleet positions confirmed," her tactical officer reported. "All ships are ready for the assault." The Krogar stronghold appeared on the main display, a massive structure bristling with weapons and surrounded by defensive platforms. Sarah had studied the intelligence reports carefully. The station held over 10,000 raiders and their support staff, along with hundreds of captured civilian workers who had been enslaved during pirate raids. This wasn't just about stopping future attacks. It was about saving the people who were suffering right now. "Begin the operation," Sarah ordered. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not because of the scale or the technology, but because of the way it was fought. The combined fleet didn't simply attack the station and destroy everything in sight. Instead, they executed a carefully planned operation designed to minimize casualties and maximize the rescue of prisoners. Human ships used their superior maneuverability to disable defensive platforms, while Viridian vessels, equipped with advanced sensors, identified which sections of the station contained prisoners. Quickling ships darted through the combat zone, marking safe corridors for evacuation shuttles. The Krogar defenders fought fiercely, but they were facing something they had never encountered before. An enemy that cared more about saving lives than taking them. Every time they tried to use prisoners as shields, rescue ships appeared to extract the captives. Every time they attempted to destroy evidence of their crimes, GDF forces were there to stop them. Commander Graxtor, the same raider who had fled from the human ships 2 years earlier, led the station's final defense. He had spent months preparing for this day, knowing that eventually the humans and their allies would come for him. But as he watched his carefully planned defenses crumble, he realized something that chilled him to his core. The attackers weren't just superior in numbers or technology. They were fighting with a coordination and purpose that his raiders couldn't match, because they were fighting for something larger than themselves. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the humans are transmitting a surrender demand." "Put it through," Graxtor growled. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked older than when he had first encountered her, marked by the weight of command and the memory of battles fought, but her eyes still held the same quiet determination that had terrified him during their first encounter. "Commander Graxtor," she said calmly, "your position is hopeless. Surrender now, and we guarantee the safety of all non-combatants on your station. Continue fighting and we will take it by force, but the prisoners will still be protected." It was the same impossible choice she had offered him 2 years ago: surrender and live or fight and lose. But this time Graxtor understood something he had missed before. The humans weren't offering him mercy because they were weak. They were offering it because they were strong enough to choose compassion over vengeance. "What happens to my people if we surrender?" he asked. "The raiders will be tried for their crimes according to galactic law. But they will be treated fairly, and those who choose to change their ways will be given that opportunity." Graxtor looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were tired, defeated, and afraid. For the first time in his life, he had to choose between his pride and their lives. "All stations," he broadcast throughout the station, "cease fire and prepare for surrender." As the battle ended and the rescue operations began, Admiral Zara 9 received reports from throughout the station. Over 3,000 prisoners had been liberated, including civilians from dozens of different species who had been captured over the years. Medical teams were treating the injured, while counselors helped traumatized captives prepare for their return home. But the most significant report came from the intelligence team searching the station's databases. They had found detailed records of Krogar operations throughout the galaxy, including the locations of hidden bases, planned raids, and allied criminal organizations. "Admiral," her intelligence officer reported, "with this information we could eliminate organized piracy in this entire sector within 6 months." Zara 9 smiled. 2 years ago, she had been a frightened transport captain, sending a desperate plea into the void. Today, she commanded a fleet that could reshape the galaxy's future. As the GDF fleet prepared to return home, Admiral Chen opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. 2 years ago, she said, the Viridians sent a distress call to the galaxy. Today, that call has been answered not just by humans, but by all of us working together. We have shown that when civilized species stand together, there is no force in the galaxy that can stand against us. She paused, looking out at the liberated prisoners being transferred to medical ships and the defeated raiders being prepared for transport to trial facilities. But our work isn't finished. As long as there are those who would harm the innocent, as long as there are calls for help going unanswered, we will be here. That is our promise to the galaxy, and to each other. The message was transmitted to every corner of civilized space, carried by quantum communicators to worlds that had never felt truly safe before. On distant planets, families slept peacefully knowing that somewhere in the void, ships crewed by beings from dozens of worlds stood ready to answer their call for help. The galaxy had learned something important in the 2 years since the Delicate Harmony had sent its desperate message. Help wasn't coming from governments or councils or official organizations. Help was coming from ordinary beings who had decided that someone else's suffering was their responsibility too. The Deathworlders had answered that first call, but they were no longer alone. The galaxy had found its voice, and that voice said the same thing the humans had said from the beginning. When someone needs help, we answer the call. It was a simple message, but it had changed everything. The age of fear was over, and the age of hope had begun.